My name is Marc Smet. I work in DG Agri in the European Commission. And in DG Agri, we have a unit B2, which is dealing with environmental sustainability. And within that unit, there is a small team dealing with forestry, a small team of four, maximum 5 persons, dealing with forestry, where I'm part of. So in the next 5 minutes in my presentation, I will try to explain to you 2 things mainly. The first one would be then to explain where this initiative comes from. This initiative of having this thematic group. And the second one would be to give you a kind of overview which tools are already available for forest dominant rural areas. So I see the first slide is already there. So I would like to just read with you this piece of text, this quote, because I think it's an important one in this discussion. So I just read it out loud. In the context of the long-term vision for rural areas, a network for forest-dominant rural areas and municipalities will be promoted to give voice to forest rural areas, ensuring their representation in key initiatives and facilitating specific assessments of reality and needs of forest areas across the EU. Now, this is actually the quote that is more or less at the basis of this thematic group and of our meeting today. That's why I wanted to highlight it here. Next slide, please. This quote is actually pops up in 2 different quite important documents from the Commission. The first one being the communication on the long-term vision for the EU's rural areas. This is a communication that was published in 2021, and it is actually this long-term vision for EU rural areas up to 2040. It identifies a number of areas of action towards a stronger, a more connected and more resilient and more prosperous rural areas and communities. And it is strongly connected. It has its own EU rural action plan. So that is the first document where this text, this quote that we read together appears. And the second document, the second important communication where this quote appears is the new EU Forest Strategy for 2030. Now, this communication was published a little bit later than the communication on long-term vision. It was in July 2021. And as you probably know, this is a communication that the objective of which is to set a vision and also concrete actions to improve not only the quality, but also the quantity of our EU forests, and also to strengthen their protection, their restoration, and their resilience. So the idea behind this thematic group and this initiative actually is that many depopulated areas in Europe coincide with forest areas and forest municipalities. And therefore, we thought that forest dominant areas deserve specific attention and to look into if networking, any form of networking could be a help to face the specific challenges of forest dominant rural areas. Next slide, please. So now I would like to just give you a brief overview of the tools that are already at hand for the forest dominant areas. And a first category, you could say, is financial support that is available under the cap specifically for forest. And this financial support could be divided in 2 categories. One, financial support that is specific for forests, focused on forests, but there is also financial support that is not forest specific, but still where forest regions which can be of a great help for forest regions. Next slide, please. So in this first category of forest specific support, here you can see the main domains for which under the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, financial support can be obtained for regions, for foresters, and so on. So the first important one, I think, is afforestation and creation of woodland. But support is also possible for agroforestry systems. We already some have already touched upon this in this morning. Agroforestry systems, not only their establishment but also their regeneration and renovation is possible. Then another important area of support is forest damage, the restoration of forest damage, but also the prevention. And forest damage that is either caused by forest fires or by any other natural disasters. There is also financial support possible for investments that improve the resilience and or the environmental value of forest ecosystems. Investments for forestry technologies, like also the processing, the mobilizing, and the marketing of forest products can be supported. Then there are support also possible within the Water Framework Directive and Natura 2000. And finally, for forest environmental and climate services and forest conservation. Next slide, please. So there are also a number of interventions possible that are not forestry specific, but more of a horizontal nature, but that still can be of a good help for forestry areas. And that is, for instance, the transference of knowledge and information actions. We have already heard some examples this morning, I think. Advisory services also. How can we diversify the income, the sources of income for farmers, for foresters? Investment in physical assets. This is also a subject, I think, that I heard this morning already quite often. For instance, the possibility to have financial support for the creation of forest roads. It is possible under the CAP. And then finally, also another horizontal measure or intervention is the cooperation. And here I think about the European Innovation Partnership operational groups, of which we already have heard a example this morning. Next slide, please. But of course, there are also other tools that are non-financial. And on this slide, you see, I think, the two main tools that are available in this context. But here, I must say, I speak under the control of my colleagues of D1 who are dealing with this. So, and first of all, you have the Rural Revitalization Platform. This is a platform that is still under construction. It will be made available on the websites of the long-term vision for rural areas this year still. Actually, its aim is to be a one-stop shop for rural communities, but also for rural project holders and for local authorities to collaborate more together. A main focus will be on rural areas that are affected either by population loss, by aging of population, but also by lack of economic opportunities. And they will do so by sharing information and sharing also best practices on the tools and the strategies that can be used. And the second important tool, I think, is the Rural Observatory. The Rural Observatory was created in December last year. Its aim is to centralize all the available data on rural areas, and as such also to support policy making. It is also especially intended to facilitate what we call the rural proofing mechanisms, which is actually a kind of test mechanism for any decision taken to check what its effect would be on the rural areas. Now, this Rural Observatory will allow the users to visualize a great number of data at different levels. It is able to create charts, and so you could, for instance, compare certain trends between different areas, between different regions, or you could also compare your different indicators with the EU average. To give just an example, this could be possible with for population density, for instance, but also there would be data for, as another example, to the average distance to the next train station, so you have an idea of the connectivity of the region. And the data that are used in this rural observatory come from the Joint Research Center, and also from Eurostat and from some Horizon Europe projects. I think I will stop here for my 5 minutes presentation. Just wanted to add that today we in DG Agri are mainly in the listening mode. We want to hear from you. You are the representatives of the rural areas and the forest dominant rural areas. What are the main challenges that you face and how you are addressing them? So I would like to thank you already for being present here, for participating in this discussion, and for your input. And I would also like to thank the CAP network contact point for having brought all of you together already in this group, because I think in this way a first step is already taken in the promotion of a network for forest dominant rural areas and municipalities. Thank you for your attention.